Okay. Yep, I can see your stream. Perfect. So just to recap last time, I think the main focus was your steering input, right? Um so the first issue that stood out to me was quite often you would turn in and then you would have to make a correction, right? You would turn out of the corner or you'll hesitate and then you're turning again. So you're turning twice. So we worked on just having that one single um, progressive steering input. And then what happened was, because you had one smooth input and weight transfer, you had a little bit more grip. There was simply more grip to take advantage of, and so you could turn the steering wheel a little bit more. You could have higher peak steering, and then what happened was it kind
Radio
of
check.
reintroduced the first issue where you was having to um, make corrections or turn out of the corner because you had the extra grip, right? So now you have to take advantage of it by turning in later or carrying a bit more speed. So that's where we're at now. And I want to continue exploring that, at least for the first part, really taking advantage of the grip, or more so learning how much grip there is, getting familiar with the different sources of information. Does that make sense? So, actually, before you go on track, there's an exercise I want you to do um, where we really focus on sound, using sound as a source of information to figure out how close you are to the limit, but also in correlation to your force feedback. What's the correlation between those two things? So, when you put it all together, you have a clearer picture of what's going on. So let me just load up a session really quickly. One second. Yeah, sorry, I probably should have done this a bit earlier. Okay, yeah. So I'm sharing my screen, loading into a session now. No, I'm not sharing it. Um, 1 second. Um, I'm loading into a private test session. Okay, you should see my stream now on Discord. Okay, yeah. So, have you heard about the method of turning down your engine volume and turning up your? Mhm. Yeah, yeah, that's good. I think a lot of people know that trick, but I think what people don't know is, just quite exactly what to listen out for, right? They don't know what sounds are good and what sounds are bad. So that's what I'm going to try and work on a little bit today. So I want to listen carefully, and when you're under the limit, the tires have a very low pitch um, sound, a low pitch rumble. So can you hear my stream? There's kind of a low pitch rumble. Whoops. Yeah. But can you hear this right here? Okay, okay. So here we go. I'm gonna try and pick up a little speed. It's I'm sure you know it. It's a very kind of low pitch, quiet noise. Yeah. And what happens as you get closer to the limit is it gets higher pitched and also louder, right? So I'm going to start off under the limit and then I'm going to try to approach the limit. So start off slow. Can you hear that? It starts off deep pitch, quiet, higher pitched, and loud. But then the important part is when you go over the limit, it sounds kind of like a wavy scrubbing noise. Like that's what I'm going to try and let you hear now. Really, and again, can you make that distinction? It's kind of like this here. Let me change my window. Where it starts off, really low, it gets louder and higher pitched, and it kind of makes this weird scrubbing noise, right? But that shouldn't be your main cue. It should just be another source of information you connect with your steering, right? So, when your the sound is down here, it feels a particular way in your steering. When it sounds like when it's up here, that feels a particular way. And then when your sound is here, it kind of has that weird, very distinct force feedback too. Does that make sense? Kind of that correlation, also the different sounds. So I think that's what I want you to do here. This exercise, but you kind of go to this oval and you practice different lines where you try to create that sound throughout the whole corner, right? Because I think that's a common problem where maybe you create that sound. Let me draw a corner here. And maybe you create that sound on entry, but not at the apex or exit. Or sometimes you might create that sound on entry, but not at the apex, and then you make it again at the exit, right? So you want that sound throughout the whole corner, and also that feeling in your wheel throughout the whole corner, just to kind of help and make it second nature to when you are using on off steering, and when you are using the tires to their full capability. So the exercise here is where you want to create that sound throughout the whole corner. Maybe start off the top lane a little bit at first, where you use more speed and less steering input, and then maybe you can go to a lower lane where you use less speed and more steering input. You try to create it the whole time without going over the limit, right? And then maybe you can mix the corner types where maybe you start off here and you go low. See, that was a bad job. The sound wasn't there on entry. It was there on exit. And so, but does that make sense so far? The way I like to visualize it is by having kind of adding it to the string theory diagram. So the string theory is when you release um, the brakes, you add the throttle. Whoops. Right. So when you release the brakes, you can use more steering, right? And when you get on the throttle, you have to use less steering. But now you can add another aspect to that, which is the sound. You want it to be throughout the whole corner. Right? Let's say, for example, you hear it at an entry, like I mentioned, and then you don't hear it on the apex, and then you hear an exit. Right? Lose that extra sound and force feedback information will kind of give you another cue. There's more time or more grip to find. So that's what I want to do at first before you go to Magello. If you load up Lanier National Speedway, just do this exercise for a few minutes to really get a feel for it. But yeah, let's go back to you. Yep, Lanier National Speedway. Yep. Um, the Porsche. Yep, your one. So not that one. It's Lanier. I think it's free content. Yeah, there we go. I had the GT3. Yeah, yeah. I think for this exercise, you want to turn it down, but it's not necessary. Once you kind of get the feel for it and make that connection between the sound and the force.
Radio check.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. It should be fine for now.
Pit lane speed limit is 48 kilometers per hour.
There we go.
You've just done a 15.3.
Nice. Now maybe intentionally go over the limit. Use a bit too much steering.
That lap time was 15.0.
See how that feels. But can you feel that difference in the steering and also the sound, right?
That last lap was a 15.5. That puts you 0.6 off your best. That lap
So
was
that
a
started
14.9.
slightly under the limit, then went over the limit. There you go.
That lap time was 14.8.
Yeah, so now try to keep it right on that limit, right? Where you don't have that kind of wavy sound. So it's nice and smooth, quite a loud, high pitch.
That lap was a 15.2. You're now 0.3 off your best.
Nice.
Your last lap time was a 14.6.
Yeah, so now you're getting a little bit of understeer. Try to make that correction with the throttle. Be a little bit patient.
That was a 14.7. You're less than a tenth off your own pace.
Right. Try to keep on that, right on that inside line.
You've just done a 14.6. You're less than a tenth off your best.
There we go, that's good.
That was a 14.5.
And now maybe go back up to the higher line where you can carry a bit more speed and use a different amount of steering.
Well, that was a 15.0. You're currently 0.5 slower than your best.
There we go. So now the next step is I want you to try and avoid
Your lap time was a
releasing
14.7. You're currently
or
0.2
having
slower than your
any
best.
too much hesitation mid-corner, right? So you're not using the throttle to keep it on that limit. You're just trying to carry the correct amount of speed. Well, that was a little better. There was no release at all. Just a little bit of hesitation in the middle and then continue. Ooh, so there, just a little bit of hesitation. That's what you want to avoid. Just one continuous input on the throttle. The same way you worked on the throttle, right? Just one single progressive throttle input. You want one single steering input. Sorry, you want one single throttle input. With no
your lap time
release.
was 15.0. You're now 0.5 off your best.
Yep. So once you get onto the throttle, you never want to release it at all. You either want on exit.
You've just done a 15.6. You're currently 1.1
So you release
off your
it slightly
best.
on entry, you maintain it on the middle of the corner, and then you get on exit. There we go. Right, because you don't want to cheat
You've just done a 15.1. You're now
create that
0.6
sound
off your best.
with the throttle on entry or mid corner, right? You want to have the rear tires on the limit too.
Your lap time was 15.1.
But yeah, I think that's enough repetitions
best.
for now, just because you don't have much time. So if you want, you can go to Mugello now. Hopefully take this, implement it into your driving. hmm Yes, yeah, it's weird. Hmm.
Radio check.
Yep, for now. Um, and of course, when you want to race, you can turn it back up. But yeah, whenever you're ready to go, on the outlap, cold tires, really focus on that sound, right? The pitch, the volume, but also trying to have it through the whole corner if possible. And of course, this is on top of everything else you've learned, so this nice smooth continuous steering, and trying to use a little bit more steering than you were before. until you hear that sound and you get that heavy feeling on the road just as it's about to. Yep, I'm watching. The stream was a little delayed, so if I say something, it might be talking about something that happened a few corners ago. Nice. Ooh. Mhm. Yeah. So the corners where it's interrupted is usually the longer corners, right? Where it's a little bit harder to keep the car on the limit. We're doing a better job on the shorter corners, and that kind of leads into the next point I want to work on. I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but it's your throttle input. And not having any release and hesitation. So I just show my screen. If you go to my screen again quickly. Okay, okay. So what I'm seeing quite often on the throttle is that you're hesitating on releasing it, right? So you get on throttle a little bit too early, and then you have to wait and wait and wait. Then you commit to the throttle. Or sometimes you get on throttle and you have to release to try and get the car to turn. Then you get back on. Still a little bit too early. You have to release and get you back on, right? So you're just transferring that weight multiple times, loading and unloading the tires, the suspension, not quite as keeping as much grip as you can. Similar to the steering, right, where you're turning and then you have a hesitation and then you're getting. It's the same principle. Now, what I wanted to try and do is just have one single application. It might look different depending on the corner. With some corners you can be really aggressive like this. With some it might have to be like this, maybe some like that. Maybe some it's a combination, but it's like this, and then you modulate, or maybe it's an S shape like this, right? But the key point is it's always being applied. You never want it to go down. It's always going up, even if it's just a very slight amount going up, maybe 2% at a lap. That's good enough. Um, and that is usually an indicator that you're over slowing for the corner. And because you're slowing down a little bit too much, you have to get on throttle early, right, to avoid cutting the inside or being under the limit too far. So what you can usually do is use that as an indicator to try and carry a little bit more speed. Depending on the corner, it might be braking later, but in a lot of the corners here where they're quite long, it's not braking later, but maybe braking slightly less, right? So maybe instead of going to 90% and training off like that, it's more up to 70% and training off like that. Does that make sense? Okay, let's go back to you. Yep, and you've got your telemetry right there too. You can kind of look at on the exit of the corner, make that connection between when it felt good or when you could feel the understeer, and also the sounds or the steering input. Now, of course, there will be some rare occasions where it's almost difficult to accomplish that thrust application. But you want to get it as close as possible. Right. So that corner right there, that long right hand, is a good example where you were able to have a continuous hesitation, but it was very close to having hesitation. So it's good, but if you want to get an even better exit, you could brake slightly less, speeding. Same thing on the last corner. You see you had a slight hesitation. Then take a mental note of that. Maybe brake slightly less next lap, which will force you to be more patient as possible. brake a little bit lighter into this right-hander coming up. There we go. A little bit of understeer there. And I think you had some curbs to use. Whoop, so you probably could have used a little bit less steering. And it would have been fine. Nice. Have some steering. Here we go, into that long right hander. Your entry is pretty good last time. Be a bit more gentle with the steering. Try to avoid that scrubbing noise on exit. So you notice right straight away that you overflowed a little bit. Had to release the throttle. Very nice. Carry a bit more speed in this right hander coming up. Kind of double right hander on the entry. Okay, so I think maybe now you understand the concepts, right? Now it's about implementing it. And I think the thing to focus on now is your references, just how precise they are. Because, for example, um, 2 laps ago, you realize you got on the brakes, or you slowed down slightly too much in the last corner, and also in that long right hander before it, you know, you have to take a mental note to try and correct it. But next lap, you still made the same mistake, right? Even though you were trying to maybe brake a little bit later or less, you still done the same thing. So I think maybe that's just a um, paying attention to your braking references a little bit more, making sure that they're a little bit more precise. So I'm gonna share my screen again. Let me just log into this. I mean, load into a session. Mm, or I can load up a replay. um, here we go. Just 1 second. Okay, here we go. So what is your reference for this corner here? Okay, this one here. Okay. Okay, and you can see that's a couple columns too early, actually, right? So you break here, um, and Zach breaks here, but it's not quite at this white line, so it's going to be difficult to be precise, right? But what stands out to me is this 50 board, and you're going to see just as Zach gets as Mac gets on the brakes, that 50 board is going to disappear. Bam! You can see he starts to get on the brakes. So that's an example of you can use something else in combination with the interior of your car, right? And it would be easy to make that adjustment. If you're not able to brake this late, then maybe you could tell yourself to brake just before it disappears, right? So maybe around here. Does that make sense? The same thing in the last corner. What would you say your reference? Yeah. So again, a little bit late, but it's going to be difficult. No, this is also. I mean, so this is. Sorry, this my brain's a bit messed up. So this black thing is too early, but this is too late, right? So it's difficult to kind of make that adjustment I was asking you, or that you realize you need to make, where you need to break a little bit less or a little bit later. But what stands out to me is this fence, this barrier on the left hand side. You can see just before it starts to disappear behind the column, bam, that's the breaking point, right? So we're using the interior of the car again, or this just before this disappears. You could even do the same. Maybe let's look at another corner where, yeah, mm, I think this one's an easier one. Maybe we could say, hmm, yeah, that's another easy one too. I think this one probably is the. Oh no, there's no reference here. But again, the left. This is a difficult one, but on the left-hand side, you'll see just as this disappears, um, right there. We could also use maybe this green curb. It's difficult to see. But you see how this green curb on the left, it gets slimmer. So it's quite wide, but then it gets slimmer here. You can just about see that out of the cockpit view. So it's quite difficult, but same thing. But does that concept make sense to you? But I think you know what to do with the steering and also the throttle. Now it's just about adjusting those references, making sure they're quite precise, so it's easier to implement what we've spoke about. But yeah, any questions or anything you want me to go over? Okay. Um. Yeah. If there's nothing else, then I won't hold you any longer. But thank you. I'm glad you did. Glad I could help. Um, I'd appreciate it if you could just leave a quick review in the Discord if that's okay. Yeah, I'm glad I could hear it. Right. Yeah. And yeah, you too. Happy New Year. And enjoy the rest of your day. Um, maybe I'll see you again in a few weeks or months. Okay. Bye.